When is the last time you said, I'm sorry? Hey, I'm Jonno White, founder of Clarity, and by the end of this video or podcast, wherever you're listening or watching, you're going to have 3 tips about being a more humble leader. Welcome to the Leadership Question of the Day podcast. I'm Jonno White, as I said, and just quickly, thank you so much for subscribing, following, liking, sharing. If you haven't done that, please do that now. It helps us to help more leaders and for you to stay in the loop. So when's the last time you said, I'm sorry? This phrase is hard. It's hard enough to say to your parents when you're little. It's hard enough to say to your spouse or to a mate that you realize I did the wrong thing there. But it's another level of challenge when you're a leader, to actually say, I'm sorry, guys, I dropped the ball. So why bother? Why go there? And I think it's a legitimate question. Why put yourself in a position of weakness? Why, when there are people, say you're a middle manager and people could stab you in the back and go for your job, why would you undercut yourself, put yourself in a vulnerable position? Well, that's a great word, isn't it? And that's really the answer. And that's the first tip that I want to give you. And that's why I asked you this question, when's the last time you said, I'm sorry? Is that if you want to create a culture of vulnerability, hey, all my Brene Brown fans out there, which is probably most of you because Brene is amazing, I want you to think to yourself, okay, how much of a culture of vulnerability are you passionate about creating? And you probably put your hand up and go, yep, Jonno, massive cult, I'm big on vulnerability. Okay, how much of a personal vulnerability do you walk in as a leader? Ooh, that's rough. I can feel the tension asking myself that. It's like, oh, that's a rough question. Can we move on to the next one? And that's because if you want to create a culture of vulnerability, if you want to Brene Brown your company, then it starts with you. And vulnerability and humility is much less about big, upfront, on the stage moments of pizzazz. Being vulnerable in those platforms is important, but it's much more about the one-on-ones. It's much more about your leadership team. You want to have a culture of vulnerability, then start with your team, walk in and take your mask off. Let your team know, starting with, oh, hey guys, I just want to say I'm sorry. I feel like I dropped the ball with this thing last week, and that's on me. No excuses, just I'm sorry. Because if you want your team, that's what a leader wants, right? You want your team to go, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball there. And you don't want them to say, but excuse number 1, excuse number 2, because we hate that. But if you want to create that culture, it's got to start with you. So that's why when is the last time you said I'm sorry is such an important question. So let's move on to the second tip around walking in humility and walking in vulnerability as a leader. And the second tip I want to give you is to put yourself in other people's shoes. This is something that we talk about in terms of empathy that sounds really obvious, but one of the other reasons I think I'm sorry is so powerful is we're saying, when we say I'm sorry, there's empathy involved in that because we're acknowledging that what we've done has affected someone, and I think that's really significant. And it's really easy to be proud, and particularly when you're the leader and no one realizes how hard you work, right? No one knows all the details. No one knows the sleepless nights you've had about issues that you could never bring up with them because it was sort of confidential with that other employee, or they don't understand that. And so when they're getting, when you drop the ball here and there and they're getting a bit upset about it, you're like, you know what, they just need to get over it, because if they just knew half the stuff I'm dealing with, well, that's where, put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. They're not having the sleepless nights you're having, sure, but they've got their own stuff. And in my experience, the 1/100th of an issue for a leader can be a 99 out of 100 issue, or 110 out of 100 issue for an employee. It can be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the leader goes, I didn't even realize that. And so when you do realize it, when you actually have a moment where you go, oh, I see that, even though I see a 1/100th, and I go, meh, step into that and put yourself in the shoes of the people it's affecting. Go to your team. Go to that team that was affected by that decision and go, hey, guys, I've realized that when I made the call on blah, I've just put 2 and 2 together, and realize that it affected you like this. And I'm sorry, I hadn't factored that in. That was my mistake that I didn't factor that in. And I just wanted to, come to you guys and apologize. That's on me. Next time, I'm really going to try to factor you in when I'm making decisions more. That's, that sucks saying that. It's like I'd much rather be outside kicking a ball around with a mate than having that conversation. But when you do that, you will be amazed at how much you foster that culture of vulnerability and humility, which I'm really yet to have a leader I respect anyway say that they don't want those things in their company. So that's the second tip. So the third tip: when was the last time you said I'm sorry? And the third tip I want to give you is to apply this in your personal life. I know I'm not Jonno the counselor, and you're not listening to this right now because you want some marriage advice, but isn't it funny how the people we value most are the people we tend to hurt the most? The people we love the most are the people we tend to hurt the most. I work with a lot of schools, and one of the things I always say to schools is, I feel for you guys because you deal with parents. Parents are like the worst case scenario stakeholder in the world. Why? Because their kids are what they value most in the world, and yet when they've got their parent hat on, in my experience working with schools anyway, parents lose all rationality. Not all, but they tend to lose a lot of rationality. So you end up with an incredibly irrational person talking with you irrationally about the thing that they value the most in the world, their kids. Recipe for miscommunication and disaster for everyone involved. And so I just tell that story because that's why parents are such a hard stakeholder for school leaders. And in the same way, that's where if you want to lead a vulnerable, humble organizational culture, then, reflect on your personal life. How do you go with vulnerability and humility with your closest mates? How's it going with your kids? When's the last time you said you're sorry to your kids? Particularly if you're a big, schmancy, successful leader. This is really healthy. I think it's really good for us. And I think this is, honestly, I'm putting my organizational culture, company culture hat on here, and it's less about you being the best person you can be, which is really what drives me at a deeper level. But I'm thinking right now of how can a leader who's listening to this going, Jonno, help me shift my company culture. I want it to be more vulnerable. And modeling is second to none. It's just like what you model is so powerful. It's like the number one thing you can go and change tomorrow is change what you're modeling. And I think that comes in our personal lives too. And so if you want to create that culture at work, then create that culture at home. Create that culture with your friends. Work on it. Saying, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball. And then telling your kids that and humbling yourself and apologizing and not giving excuses and not saying but, or saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, but actually saying, I'm sorry. I made a mistake and I can see that it hurt you and blah, blah, blah. And that's on me. So nice, uplifting, fun topic today, saying I'm sorry. So let's end with a really positive note. Who are you going to apologize to today? It's going to be great. I really hope that you've gotten something out of this. And I know it is a hard topic, but I believe in you. I am so pumped for you as a leader to become the very best leader you can be, because I know that as you create the company culture that you're dreaming of creating, it's going to be a massive blessing to so many people, families, kids, communities, and I honestly believe that. So I have your back. If this has helped you to get clear about anything in your leadership, then comment with the word clarity below. And right now, thank you so much for subscribing, following, liking, sharing. If you haven't done that, please grab that index finger if you're on the phone. Grab that mouse or the mouse pad if you're on a laptop, and squiggle to wherever it is and give us a big yell of a subscribe, follow, like, share. It helps us to help more leaders to become the best they can be. And it means that you'll be in the loop with our absolute stellar content that's always coming out, which is only going to get better, particularly if you're listening to this in 10 years. Man, I'm so excited about the content that's coming up. If you're coming back and binging all previous Clarity content, then you're lucky, because you're experiencing the future, and I don't even know it's there yet. But no, there's good things, and there's so much great content because we just love investing in you. I have talked more than enough today. I'm a bit sick of my own voice. I don't know if you are. So why not listen to more of me by going to the next episode? No, in all seriousness, thank you so much for hanging out. I hope it's been helpful to you, and I've really valued our time together, and I look forward to hanging out again soon. Cheers.